My name's Gavin Summerson and I work for the building research establishment, BRE. Refurbishment of existing buildings is very important because 70% of existing buildings will still be in occupation in 2050. And the government targets are to reduce carbon emissions by 80% by 2050. So we need an 80% reduction in energy use from our existing buildings if we are to achieve that target.
My name is Doyle. I'm a director of a small consultancy called Adecco, which works largely in social housing around a retrofit. The retrofit industry is currently slightly floundering around, is coming up with solutions, is coming up with workarounds. There is a gap here that architects can step into. There's some bits that are fundamentally missing from the retrofit at the moment. The biggest one for me is that we don't have a vision of what we want to create in retrofit in this country, and we are in serious risk of just creating bland solutions, technical solutions. They might be solid, they might be great, but they're not creating the places that you or I want to be in 50 years' time. What are we trying to create beyond just a carbon saving, for example, a carbon saving target? We need more than that, and we can add more than that. I think the other bit of that is about the people, and the only way that you can deliver on that vision is to see that vision, but also translate that vision both for the client, but also the elements of that go to make the team that delivers that vision for the client. Well, retrofit is so relatively new on the scale that we're doing it in this country, and so many people are now involved. They've slightly lost the sense that that is their role. Absolutely they can, and it would be, if we can get that to work, that would be perfect, because I could see a team led by an architect and delivering large-scale retrofit being perfect for that. It would work very, very well. We're not currently doing it, and that's missing.
Right, my name's John Swinney. I work for Carillion. The challenge that the profession has is that it's not really seen as part of the retrofit process in terms of housing, in terms of one-off people doing their homes up, or in terms of doing an estate or a community in the context of social housing. I think some of that is to do with the fact that most domestic retrofitting happens on a very, very small scale. So it's one-off properties, or it's maybe external walls on a tower block, where the people doing that, the builders, the construction companies, don't really see any value added by the architect. So I think that's the challenge, really. There are lots of reasons why retrofitting is not happening at scale. Funding being one, but there's lots and lots of different things. And it does occur to me that it's possible that part of that sort of the challenge, or the reason why it isn't happening, is because architects aren't involved in the process. And if they were, would that be one of the key things that would make a difference and would transform the retrofitting agenda? Because it's not happening at scale, and it needs to if we're going to make a difference.
I'm James Pellat. I'm Head of Projects at Great Portland Estates. I'm responsible for all capital expenditure in terms of our development programme. The retrofit for us is taking an existing asset and working out what we can do to add value to that. Often to reposition it, often to give it a new identity, to refresh it and reposition that building such that it creates a statement not just for itself but in terms of the local environment as well. There is a real dedicated skill required to approaching a retrofit project. Firstly, in the advice to us in terms of should we retrofit or not. Often there is something that an architect can find that we hadn't considered, and we may have a preconception that we want to do a new build project. And I think it's for the successful architects that work with us are those that challenge a preconceived idea in a positive way. One of the most valuable tools that we do is in post-occupancy evaluation. And that is, I find them absolutely fascinating, because however we've dreamed a building from the beginning, how an occupier feels about that building is invaluable customer research. And whether that's down to the intangible things about maintenance, how easy it is to maintain, those things are valuable, but it's really listening to an occupier, and from that you can get some tremendous feedback for your next schemes, and that in that way you get continuous improvement.
I'm Benjamin Lesser. I work for Doyle in London as a development manager. For us, Retrofit is about transformation and regeneration. We do make a point of actually always going back to the buildings because we're actively managing them, but also maintaining and building relationships with our tenants to understand exactly what their experience is of those buildings. And so all of that does feed back, and we do then involve the architects in that learning, so that actually they are understanding the implications of some of the decision making through a previous project. They understand the implications on the next project. When it comes to architecture and design, it is of course about those architectural services, but it's actually more than that. It's about creative talent, and having creative talent as part of the team is really our driver and the key success factor for us. Be brave in your thinking. Make sure that you actually are knowledgeable on as many fronts as possible, from design, architecture, to the environmental, the construction side, but also I think the sort of sociological side of design, thinking about people, how people occupy, whether it's housing or workplace, actually thinking holistically about the whole experience. And don't be frightened of actually bringing all those different strands of thinking together.
My name is Swinney Prasad. I'm a founding partner of Penoyer & Prasad LLP. We are architects. The way architects can add value to retrofit projects, I think, falls in 2 or 3 distinct categories. If you take, for example, the large-scale energy efficiency retrofit of our housing stock that is urgently needed, 26 million dwellings, then it's not so much the technical skill of an architect, perhaps, that will be at stake, but very much more about how to take a strategic view of an entire urban quarter or an estate, and to understand how value can be added through urban design, architecture, reconsidering the whole, not so much about insulation and airtightness, but about those issues, and to show how this whole large project can be made possible by bringing in those skills. On smaller domestic projects, there are equally opportunities to enhance the quality of life inside a building while also doing the domestic energy retrofit, which actually makes a better building and helps pay for everything. And on non-domestic buildings, it's actually exactly all the skills that architects use anywhere anyway. It's how to reuse a building, how to imaginatively rethink space, and while also keeping on top of the performance of a building. There are a few things that you can identify as the retrofit program unfolds, and the extraordinary prospect that we're going to have to retrofit 3.5 million non-domestic buildings and 26 million other buildings just for energy efficiency over the next 30, 40, 50 years. As that prospect emerges, we do have to think a little harder about, well, what is it that architects can really bring to all this? And some of the skills that are missing, or may be missing, are to do with really understanding some of the numbers, understanding value, understanding how not only energy efficiency, not only the performance of the building, but how a building works actually translates into real returns, some of which are monetary, other ones are less tangible to the client, and how to deploy that and make the most of it, and how to provide leadership through understanding that. I think that will be if architects acquire those skills, their skills of advocacy backed up with some real understanding of numbers, carbon numbers, energy numbers, but also money numbers, and to be able to synthesize those, argue for those, and be able to deliver them, to take custody of what actually happens when a building starts getting used, then architects will be providing just the skill that is needed.